podcast that floats down here.
Hi, I'm Melissa, your Stephen King veteran.
Hi, I'm Ben, the Stephen King and horror film fanboy.
And hello, I'm Luke, your first-time Stephen King reader.
Hello, and welcome to the penultimate episode, at least for the book, of Floats Down Here. Tonight we are talking about Derry, the last interlude. This section was 12 pages long, which is 1.1% of the book. We're going to jump to the first date, because this entire chapter was basically a journal entry, and the first date was June 4th, 1985. Let's go ahead and, Benj, can you go ahead and kick us off here? What's your first thought about this section?
Yeah, so we're 5 days out from the battle under the city, and Bill Stutter's already disappearing. He's already kind of breaking it. There's only little hints of it, especially like on a seas and such, but very, very faint and everything. So stuff's already starting to revert away. Including
a little bit of remembering, right? Like the stuttering's gone. Things are starting to fade a little bit, except for Audra.
Yeah, like him, Bill and Mike, they're still remembering, quite a bit and having a little conversation about what's going on. They don't really talk about what happened or anything, but they do talk about her condition.
Yeah, so Luke, let's talk about Audra.
Yeah, she's not in very good shape, huh? And I was pretty worried about her at the end of last chapter. Pretty warranted, I think. And I think I gave Bill a pretty hard time about not going to the hospital with his wife, which I think I still feel that way. Like, come on, man, you have that should be your priority at this point. But she's not looking so great. Catatonic is the word that they use, not non-responsive. Seems to be healthy enough, just mentally broken. I believe they also talk about getting a special ambulance to take her up to Bangor, which, yeah, basically a mental institute that they're alluding to, correct?
Yeah, at least they're not talking about... Go ahead, Melissa, sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
I was going to say, at least they're not talking about the mental institute that Henry Bowers was in. I couldn't think of the name of it.
Juniper Hill?
Juniper, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, I can't decide if I'm frustrated about Bill keeping Audra in Derry, or if it makes total sense that he's like, if I leave, then that means I'm giving up. He is the one sort of trying to decide if she stays, if I stay, should I stay or should I go now with her, right? Because if he stays, there's still that sense of well, maybe, right? It's like a parent whose kid gets lost. If I leave, they'll never find me if I'm not here at this house. But then it's been, years. So you need to move on with your life. He needs to decide, do I want to live here in this limbo, or do I want to move on and just accept that this is my life now? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it's odd that, and maybe this is something that actually comes up a little bit more later, but it seems that they're all forgetting things, and Bill and Mike tend to be less affected because they're still in Derry.
Mm-hmm.
I would almost think the further you are from Derry, the better of a chance she might have it recovering. She could be stuck because of the magic in the area, and removal could be the best thing for her. I don't know. That's the first thing I thought. I was like, well, the further you get from it, the better off everyone is 100% of the time. So that's where I would start with it, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Too bad he doesn't leave.
But again, it's one of those, like you said, you take the risk of leaving and hoping the further you get away, it breaks, or there's no change. It's that coin toss of,
once you leave.
Yeah, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's called risks.
Luke, I notice you have something here about a different spouse.
Yeah. So it sounds like the true story and background of Bev's relationship with Tom finally comes out to the rest of the group. It seemed like they had some idea. I believe it was as they were walking down to the standpipe to climb in and into the tunnels. Bill in his head was like, well, sounds like Mr. Perfect Husband isn't so perfect after all. Like there were some chinks in the armor, I guess. And yeah, no, it sounds like the truth has come out that he emotionally and physically abused her, and also her friend in Chicago. They finally got that confirmation that, hey, yeah, they did finally find out about her. So that's
That was so long ago.
Yeah.
So one thing to your point there, Luke, because you remember this is from Mike's perspective, where he's learning about the true state of her dear departed husband. Mike didn't know any of that when Bill had told Richie and the rest of them, yeah, Bev here went and married Henry Bowers. And Bev says, no, I married my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike wasn't around for that. So him, getting that new information once he's out of everything, kind of makes sense for him to document it in his journal as well.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I'm with you.
Yeah, and so with that said, it's a good plan on her part to, head back to Nebraska, kind of chill out for a week, and then go back to Chicago. Where's Tom? But here's the thing. By that point, she might actually legitimately forget about him.
Don't they even kind of mention that?
Yeah, they said she'll probably forget where he's actually even at. So
right.
Any investigation would be fruitless.
Yeah, Veritaserum not going to help with this. I legitimately don't know. I just don't know.
That works out. I mean, I know just enough to know that she won't actually miss him.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. Like, I don't think she's going to be like, oh no, I've lost. Like, it's going to be, I know he's really gone, but I have to and I don't know how he's gone, but he's gone and that's good. So let's get this taken care of.
Yeah, I had a quick thought. Like, what if it was like so encompassing that just him in general was completely forgotten by her? Like, just because it's so tightly knitted with the memory of her father and how just bad Derry is, like kind of all wrapped together, that maybe it's all encompassing. But yeah, I think it's gonna be more like almost like the reverse Derry effect. Like, yeah, I know he's gone, but that doesn't really affect my life whatsoever. I'll just not worry about it. Like just the apathetic response of, well, he's not here. I don't know where he's at.
Could be like 20 years down the line, she goes to get married and they're like goes for a wedding license or something. And they're like, wait, you're still married. Where's this Tom?
Oh yeah. This Tom guy. I don't know.
Yeah. He ran off. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh,
one thing at the very end of this section that really caught my attention was when Bill goes to kiss Mike on the cheek. Right. And, it was almost word for word very similar to what Georgie does for Bill, and it basically says, he did something that really caught Mike's attention. And in the first chapter, it was, and Georgie did something Bill had never happened before, and he kissed him on the cheek, and it just really kind of, I don't know, again bringing story full circle. We're very close to the end here. You have a similar kind of nod to friendship and family kind of tie in here, and I don't know, I just think it put a nice little bow on what we know now, the last time they likely ever see each other.
Yeah.
Physically, not the last time they speak, but we'll talk about those coming up, but last time they actually see each other.
All right. Well, that ends June 4th, so let's jump to June 5th. And my big thought on this one, it's really interesting that Mike is the one who gets to start forgetting this time.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who starts forgetting. He's losing some detail, and that's very different. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, it's fitting. He's been there for so long that he should be allowed. And there is a line, and look, I see the second half of the hair, so I won't go full into it. But this forgetting, the prospect fills me with panic, but it also offers a sneaking sort of relief. It suggests me more than anything else that this time they really did kill it. And it's one of those that it's terrifying, but at the same time, it's uplifting because you don't have to worry.
Yeah, and like you alluded to, the very next line in that sentence is that there is no need of a watchman to stand and wait for the cycle to begin again. They don't. It's his role as the person who remembers, or at least doesn't lose everything. It's not as needed now, and I like that. It also, he looks at it as that true confirmation that maybe the cycle isn't going to start again because I'm forgetting too. And I like that self-awareness, and I like that we have just a further confirmation that, yep, here's another big piece of the puzzle that now Mike gets to be normal, because I remember reading this first time ever. You guys have heard me the whole time, and I had a lot of questions about Mike from the very start of who's this guy that's calling people? Why is no one remembering anything? Why is he the only one that seems to have any inclination of what's going on? And I like that now he gets to be just a regular person now and hopefully survive better.
I have a huge issue with the Mike forgetting thing.
Okay.
Back in the very first interlude, 7 years, 5,000 pages earlier on page 140, Mike said, I know you see, not everything, but a lot. I didn't just start when I opened the Derry News one day last September, reading the transcript of the Unwin Boys' preliminary hearing, and realized that the clown who killed George Denborough might be well back again. I actually started around 1980. I think that is when some part of me, which had been asleep, woke up, knowing that its time might be coming round again. What part? The Watchman part, I suppose. This section leads me to believe that earlier on in the development of the story, I think, the way I read this, that Mike had forgotten, maybe not to the same level of everybody else, but that his life in Derry was pretty mundane and just went through, and he didn't remember most of it. But that in 1980, his brain woke up, like he got his own call, if you will. So him forgetting here and us taking that as a sign of, oh yeah, it's totally gone, worries me slightly, because what if his forgetting is that same version like he did between 1958 and 1980? Discuss.
Yeah, I think that's fairly reasonable, truly. And but we also know that like the way he was raised with his father, and as his father was in the hospital, and we see some of the other interlude chapters where he's still getting some information on these things. He's not searching it out, and he's not looking at it in the same
all
lens.
The interludes were after 1980, except for the thing with his father. Besides that one, all of the interludes were interviews post 1980 with his waking up.
Right. Yeah. No, I get that. It's really the talking with his father about the black spot and the giant bird and the floating. That's the one that sticks out to me. Of
okay,
maybe there's and like I think maybe like you said, he didn't lose everything as deeply, but I think there was always still something there. There was a reason he stayed in Derry. There was a reason he stayed close, because subconsciously he had to, and that was ordained, like they keep using that term. And I guess that's kind of how I look at it. But yeah, I think you make a really good point that maybe he's fooling himself that, oh, I don't remember forgetting last time, but I'm realizing I'm forgetting this time. So maybe his awareness is different. So that shouldn't mean confirmation that it is dead.
Right. I mean, he's also just 6 days past a giant attack, and the first interlude is basically his writing from how many months and years, you know what I mean? It's at least, I lost the page. Let's see, there's usually a date on these. January 2nd. So it's almost 6 months, 5 or 6 months prior, and he's just been through a fairly traumatic experience. So theoretically, I mean, I could give it to him, that idea of like forgetting that you had forgotten and remembered.
How could I forget what I've forgotten already?
I think there's something a little later, though, that confirms the feeling he's having here. So I'll get to that. We'll talk about that when comes up.
Okay. The only other thought I have in this is Ben got the girl. They're excited for him. Glad that it was Ben. Makes the fact that Bill and Bev slept together still bother me a little bit even more, but that's okay. I'll get over it. And then we move on to June 6th.
Yeah.
Benj, go ahead.
I had a joke for the previous comment of what happens in Derry is forgotten in Derry. So the whole Bill and Bev thing. Anyway, June 6th. So yeah, the investors are pulling out of Derry, and new investors are possibly scared to try. It's almost like the town in and of itself is dying, as Mike says, and that could be because same reason of Bill, Bev, Richie, Eddie, Stan all being prosperous outside the town, that was an effect that it was having on inside the town, making it a prosperous town. Now that it is gone, it probably won't be a prosperous town. It'll probably be, gone. And on top of that, it makes me think, where is the careers of the ones leaving going to end up? are they still going to be well off? I mean, they'll still have the money they had from before, but will be prosperous in the future now that they don't have the backing of it or the other or whatever.
A lot of them, it seems like they still have the natural skill, and it was luck to get them where they got to. They're already still at that. As long as like Richie doesn't get fired for taking a powder, I don't think any of them are going to lose their jobs. Stan, his prospects aren't great. Neither are Eddie's, but moving forward, I think the other four will be just fine because of. I mean, look at Ben, the publicity, the PR around that guy. He could not work for 5 years and then come back into a building and people are still going to be interested. So,
and if Beverly is sticking with Ben, then she doesn't have to work at all. Like, her biggest thing is that her jerk of a husband was the marketer of her, if you will. But I mean, if you're with Ben, who cares?
And again, like, her name is still synonymous with that brand, is what it sounded like. So right. She could hire somebody else to do, like, if she wants to keep that up, which she should, if she enjoys it, do what you like. But yeah, I don't think any of them are going to have any issues maintaining what they have, because a lot of it was just amplifying their own natural talents, I guess is how I look at it.
Yeah. There's some more forgetting in this section too.
Yeah, whenever Mike calls Richie, it goes to the answering machine first, which young kids out there used to be these things called answering machines. It was not built into your cell phone because those were not really around. Anyway, and Mike calls and he's listening to the song, which he gets the band wrong, and that's kind of funny. But it takes Richie a minute to answer it, and we find out that, yeah, he's basically screening his calls, right, and letting him go to answering machine before he decides if he's going to answer it or not. And it took him a little bit longer to pick up the phone for Mike because, and Mike called him out on it, Richie had actually forgotten who Mike was already. Just, a couple days later, and he's already having trouble remembering who this really, really important person in his life was. And like, I don't know, there's a lot of things along with this conversation that I think is just really sad for like moving forward, like someone that was so important to your life. And like this whole group, the further they get, it's just like, well, I get it. That's part of the symbolism of also with growing up. Like, you grow apart, you forget about each other, and that's just what it is. And I think that's kind of what it's getting at, but it's just sad that it's so rapid and there's literally nothing they can do about it, which we'll get to a little bit more further.
And even the fact that they recognize it. So it's not even that it's happening, it's that they see it happening and they know it's futile to fight it. Like, we just have to let it go. We just have to, like, we have to lose each other. And that's what that's the price that we have to pay for what we've done. We have to lose each other. And that is sad. I agree with you. Any other thoughts on this one before we move to the next section?
Just like right along with that same thing, they can't even remember Stan's last name. Neither one of them.
I know.
Like, geez, it's just, it's gonna be a pretty common theme throughout this epilogue, I guess. But it's just, it's just sad.
Poor Stan.
Poor Stan Underwood.
Stan Underwood.
Something like that. All right, June 7th. Luke, you want to go ahead and I'm going to throw something out there really quick, because this is where we find out about the police chief. And okay, it's very sad that we had another casualty of the town collapse because of water damage and structural damage. But who thought putting a 400-pound chair on the top floor was a good idea?
Yeah.
Under any circumstances. Oh, engineer of mine, can you explain is that a reasonable thing for people to do?
Yeah, that's not heavy at all. Like, that's not that.
It's not?
No.
In an old building like that?
No. People are dumb. Architects are dumb. That happens all the time. And it's really not that heavy at all.
Okay. I felt like
it is when it's falling on your head.
Well, yes, but it's not unreasonable to have that up on a higher floor.
No.
Okay.
40,000 would be a different question.
Even 1,000? Would 1,000 be too much?
It'd be worth looking at.
Okay. But 400, I shouldn't worry.
No.
Okay. Then I won't.
But yeah, so that chair fell on Chief Rademacher's head, and doing research for this epilogue here, I was trying to come up with some ideas, and I saw a note that said it felt as if Derry was correcting itself because Rademacher was one who blew off all the kids' deaths originally, especially when like Mike was calling him out on it, saying, hey, you need to do something. The only time he took notice was like the Adrian Mellon part or Mike himself getting attacked, but didn't feel like he was really taking anything too seriously. And so this was kind of the comeuppance of the lackluster police work. I thought it was an interesting take on it. I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and I also like that it was the actual tramp chair that falls on him, right? And that was the one that he sat Mike in when he was little, and almost it seemed like he wasn't going to let him out. Like he kind of got his rocks off by torturing little kids a little bit of a Argus Filch type feeling from that in that early interlude chapter. So I like that Derry correcting itself on that karma right there.
Yeah,
I'm a little upset that you had to throw out a squib reference, like attacking the closest squib nearby just because it's Argus Filch. Come on,
no, the torturing students. He wishes he could.
Snape would have done the same thing. Anyway,
he did do the same thing. He's the worst.
He is. Okay, Luke, you've got another kind of thought here from Bill.
Yeah, it's again referencing memories, and it's Bill at the very end of it basically saying, you know what, Mike, it's scary, isn't it, forgetting like this? And it is, and that's kind of what we were just talking about, especially with like how rapidly they're forgetting things, and like you said, the self-awareness, like they realize that's happening. It's a very like Edgar Allan Poe type feeling I'm getting, which. There's been a lot of different styles throughout this whole book, but that's kind of what I like. It feels like a very, Poe type. My dog Poe is looking at me like, "Whoa, what do you need?"
Why are you talking about me?
Like it's very Poe-esque short story feeling with this, seeing your memories get wiped away, basically. And I don't know, it's really really neat. And I just want to reference a band as well. One of their songs, it says. A good friend once told me we are memory. Without them, we equal nothing. And I think there's some truth to that statement, especially in stories and things. And so it's almost like they truly are losing a major, major part of themselves. But that was part of the sacrifice that it took to kill it. And so maybe it's only for the better. They're really only forgetting incredibly negative things. So it just sucks that right along with that, the Losers Club has to be forgotten too.
Exactly. And, if you want to take out all of humanity, you have to take out the memory because it's the most important thing.
That's true. That's true. That's absolutely true. Brandon Stark was always the most important character.
Anyway.
June 8th, 1955. Ben, do you want to go ahead and start this one?
So this is where I was saying from our previous discussion about the memory and Mike, especially with Mike's memory. My note is it's a shame that even the book will fade quicker than normal. Makes you wonder if the other histories will be wiped out as well. But like this is the confirmation to me that they defeated it. It's not that Mike forgetting entirely; it's that the book keeps fading, and he could keep rewriting it. But it's quickly fading. It's only 9 days later, and the addresses and stuff are are being lost. And but it makes me think like the other histories of Derry are those fading as well.
That's a good point.
That's a good point. I would think so. Honestly, like I hope not though.
Like
you say, you hope so.
I would hope so because right now the only things fading. The only writing that's fading are the phone numbers of his friends and their addresses. It's not like all of his
journals and
journals are fading. It's simply their phone numbers. And he can't contact them.
True.
And he's like, and he even said, like, I could write it every day, go over and write them all. It was like, but it would be like writing, I will not throw spitballs in class 500 times. It becomes redundant. And then because he recognizes his own forgetting, he won't even know why he's doing it or who these people even are. Is it just me or does it feel like Alzheimer's, right? The idea that you're forgetting, you can feel yourself forgetting like little light things. And then, but once it's gone, you won't even know that you lost it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I read along with that in the earlier section where Mike calls Richie and Richie says, he has that, it was just on the tip of my tongue, that feeling, of, I know the answer. And as soon as someone says it, you're like, oh yeah, that's what it was. Like, playing Trivial Pursuit. Like everyone knows that feeling of, I know that I know this answer. It's not complicated. And then as soon as you have that confirmation from somebody else, you're like, that's what it is. And I feel like that's what they're all going through as well. And that's what we saw with Richie. As soon as he was prodded into Mike's voice and giving some context, he got enough to know who Mike was and remembered enough to have that conversation. But 3 more days later, and that might not even be possible. And at the very end of this section, it says, let it go, because he's telling himself, it's futile. I'm not going to remember. And like you said, it just becomes a pointless task of tracing these letters. But he leaves off with, Bill, act quickly, but be careful. Basically saying the magic is fading, whatever that is. And as soon as it's gone, it seems like there might be that window shutting on potentially saving Audra, is what it seems like Mike is alluding to.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Just it really seems like Derry is going to die. We had the comments earlier about some upcoming projects being canceled in the area or moved just outside of town, and like we're not going to rebuild the mall because it's not really worth it anymore. The whole metropolitan area is just destroyed, and it's going to be just completely neglected because it's not worth saving at this point. And Raytheon decides that they're going to break ground somewhere else, and it's just Derry is going to die, and it's essentially already dead. Now it's rotting into non-existence, is what it seems like. A lot of it fell into the ground, so not really salvageable. But I just think it's interesting that we get more confirmation that there's not going to be anything even physically left after a little while.
Do you think it's worth letting Derry die?
Probably. It seems like it was essentially, but I mean, now that Pennywise is gone, it just seems like it doesn't have a purpose now. So I don't know.
I was going to say, Luke, it kind of feels like it's lost its identity. It's unknown, unconscious identity. And so it has there's no allure to stay. Yeah.
And it's not, for the people that are there or who didn't grow up there, it's like, well, we just came here in the last 15, 20 years. There's nothing for us. We don't have any sentimentality towards it, really. Let's go build somewhere else and not have it fall into the ground again if history repeats itself. Not a good investment.
Okay. All right, let's jump to June 9th, 1985. I feel like we need to talk about Ben. What happened to Ben's phone?
Well, my guess is 2 things. Either A, he just checked up, they made Chicago and they're like, we're sticking around, and he just canceled all of his stuff. Or B, the phone number faded and he says it's still legible, but how often do you write a 9? At least for me, I write a 9. It could be a 4, because if I don't hit that top part just right, and he just might have dialed the wrong number because it's faded just ever that much.
See, I always assumed he and Beverly ran off and disconnected all their stuff. That was always how I read it, but I think that could not be true. I could be wrong in how I've interpreted it. So I'm just curious what you guys think.
Well, how do you, they just ran off and just disconnected from everything just to be by themselves, or?
Yeah, and I mean, remember, this was Hemingford home, right? That's where Ben was. That's where he went and had a drink at the bar every Saturday night with good old Ricky Lee. And
Ricky Lee.
Oh, look at me pulling out a name.
He nailed it now.
I know. I'm pretty impressed because that's not my strong suit. But it's almost like he's realizing that life's not worth it. I don't need that anymore. I don't need that sense of home, right? I'm totally just writing a whole story for Ben with absolutely no background or truth. But in my head, it's well, maybe he's found a new life with Beverly and he doesn't need that anymore. And so he just disconnected and he didn't leave a forwarding number. It's not like a cell phone that you can move across the country and just keep the same number. Maybe he moved to Chicago with her thing. It's been the week, right? It's been the week since
over a week
would go to Chicago. Maybe he just decided I'm going with her.
See, I'm going to do tinfoil. They're going to meet in the middle. They're living in St. Louis. They're here.
That would not be the middle.
Closer to the
of Nebraska and Chicago would be Iowa. Sorry.
Yeah. All right, fair.
Oh, Iowa. I mean, we love Iowa. Yay, family.
I like Iowa. It's fine.
I know. I
was good.
I wasn't actually being sarcastic that time.
Pseudo sarcasm. Yeah, I don't know. Did we have confirmation that they were in Nebraska even yet? I was flipping back through. I know that that Beverly hugged Mike and then they left, and we heard about their plans. Maybe they're not even there yet. They were going to take their time. I mean, they're just going on a road trip. They literally have all this goddamn money. I mean,
and nothing to do.
Nothing to do. A decent car to go driving in. Go visit. They're stopping in Nashville. They're stopping in St. Louis. They're doing the road stuff. I don't think that's unreasonable.
I just remember
the phone.
Well, he's been gone for like 3 weeks, and they were worried about him, so they just disconnected it for him.
Like 9 days, 10 days. He's been gone 10 days. That is not that long.
Ricky Lee had a pretty good suspicion that we're never going to see that guy again.
So he just said, you know what? Cut him off.
You know what? I'm just going to do him a favor. I'm going to go through and cancel his bills and just make sure that, all of his utilities get shut off. And
its mail's been stopped.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, from what we learned in National Lampoon's Vacation back in the 80s, driving across country takes 2 to 3 weeks because they drove from Chicago to California, and it took a goddamn 2 weeks to get there. So from driving from Maine to Nebraska, it's a reasonable thing. It might take about 2 weeks to make that trip.
They're going leisurely.
Okay. All right. Luke, you have a thought about Ben also.
It's similar to a reference from an earlier section where Richie and Mike couldn't remember. Did Eddie have asthma or chronic migraines? It's like they're just like another thing that they can't remember. And here Mike's like, man, was Ben fat? Did he have a club foot? Like, what was wrong with him? Who goes to club foot?
No, but he definitely had elephantitis.
Oh.
I didn't put the reference in last time. I'll go with it. Anyway.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I was going to say, I almost thought we had missed the Eddie thing, but I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, Ben does not have a club foot. He was just fat. But who's going to remember now? There's no remembering.
Ricky Lee, because he told him.
That's a good point. All right, Ricky will remember. And probably Ben will remember being fat because that happened.
In between that he figured out.
Like that was still a thing. So, All right, here we go. Last section, June 10th, 1985. Go ahead, Luke.
Oh, it pretty much just says that Bill and Mike are the only ones who remember each other very clearly because we're how many days out now? And as we've been talking about, it's pretty unlikely that any of the other ones have any idea of what Derry is in general. And so that's not too surprising. And it's just because Bill and Mike are still in Maine, they're still in Derry, that they're remembering. Like their proximity wise, you can't forget about something if you're literally standing there, right? I mean, like, I can't forget about this forest that I'm in because I'm in the forest. You might not see it through the trees, but you realize you're in a forest, hopefully.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think they only remember each other because they're there. Do you think if one of them leaves, then they'll forget?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's inevitable because, and I think they might not be saying it, but I think they are still even forgetting about things already between the two of them.
Like there's even more forgetting than is being recorded for us here.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, because nobody's even mentioned it.
No.
Right?
No, it was not mentioned once in this whole section, I believe, in this whole interlude.
Well, that's nice.
I think
especially.
You're correct.
What'd you say?
I said I think you're correct.
Which is interesting because even way back in section 1 or chapter 1 and chapter 2, like it was the orange and the silver and the pom poms, and remember we just kept seeing it over and over and over again, and that all disappeared. That's all gone.
Yep.
So it's kind of nice. Glad that's gone. What do you got there, Benj?
I only have Mike and Bill are talking, and he's trying to figure out what Bill's planning here because he's had this plan, this whole interlude of some way to help Audra. And Bill comes back with he laughed and said something I both do and don't understand. You can't be careful on a skateboard, man. And hearing that from your friend, who his penchant for bravery, I can put it that way, it would make you worry. Even if, you might be forgetting most of the stuff about him, you're still going to hear something like that. And it's like, what the fuck, dude? You have to worry a bit. And I think Mike took it with a little bit of worry, but also at the same time knew that Bill knew what he was doing.
All right. My last big takeaway from this is really the idea that at the very end it was like, I love you guys, I love you so much, right? That's the last thing that Mike writes, and we never hear from Mike again. Like, that just takes Mike. That's the last thing we get from him. So I kind of like that that's his parting word.
Yeah, because even if he would go back and read these things later on, like, it would be not as emotion filled as it probably should be. It's hard to read this list of events, and if it doesn't fade in time, if it truly does remain, and I think that's just his last ditch effort to show that, yeah, I mean, this was something special. This was something very, very near and dear to his heart, and it's a really nice sentiment to leave off on.
Mm-hmm. All right, now we get into the section called Questions for the New Reader, of which we have none.
Yeah.
I mean, we're like 8 pages away from ending the book, so I don't really have anything.
I have a question that you guys can ask me.
Oh, okay. What would you like to be asked?
Ask me about, hey, what is the crazy idea that Bill might have that he doesn't want to...
Oh, there you go.
It's like the only open-ended question that we haven't, I think, thoroughly talked about. So.
And let's be honest, I'm so like ready for this to be ending. No offense, people, this was really fun, but like I'm excited about the end of the book that I didn't even consider that as something you don't already know. But look, here we are.
Yeah.
1 chapter away, and there's something you don't know yet. So, Luke, what do you think Bill is going to try? What is his crazy idea?
I really don't know. To me, it seems like he's gonna have to like take her back down into the tunnels or something. Knowing how long the next little epilogue chapter is, I doubt we're gonna spend much time there at all. So I don't know. I think there has to be some kind of connection remade. There's no magic down there, or maybe it's still just fading, and it's kind of like a reverse supernova that's concentrating down, and
maybe he just has to dip her in some sewer water and like wash it off.
The anti-holy water, right? Just Derry sewer water. Just give her a couple sprinkles, she'll be fine. That's I guess what I would. Just reading this, I think he's gonna have to take her back down to the tunnels for something, and just somehow reconnect some synapses with magic. I don't know how.
Because magic.
Because there's magic, and even and the thing that really points to that for me is when Mike says, "Hurry, Bill! Like you're running out of time." And like that line alone makes me think kind of what you guys were saying at first makes more sense. That if he does leave and forgets, then that just becomes a stasis. She's just in that, and if they're still within this realm of magic and it hasn't faded completely yet, then maybe there is a reversal that it's not necessarily the proximity thing. We have to be within the magic to use it, I guess.
All right. How about questions from the new reader?
Oh, you guys have a question that I should ask you?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I have nothing you could ask me.
No, I really don't have much. I liked this interlude. I think the interludes are in general my favorites. So
why is that?
One, because it's mostly Mike typically, and I just like the way he thinks. We have always gotten more information and very well described. Like just the way he thinks is what I've been wanting to know. Like the stuff that he's known throughout the book is the stuff that I want to know. And so I don't know. It's just nice to have that
information research, man.
Yeah, it just feels good also to get kind of the broader perspective on things, and sometimes it's just around the city and other things, not just right over Bill's shoulder, right over Beverly's shoulder, which those are great chapters too, but I just like the more broad strokes, I guess.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to jump to my favorite thing. Benj, what was your favorite thing?
Yeah, so Ben got his January embers. He got his fiery redhead, and got the car and went. And you know what? As much as, we were kind of ragging on Bev for the last couple sections, it still was meant to be from the beginning. It was right. And I'm glad it ended up that way.
Good job, Ben Hanscom. I had to be specific. Good job, Ben, other Ben, too. But I'm very happy for Book Ben getting the girl. Luke, how about you?
Well, you say hi to Bill and that pretty wife of his, Richie said with a cheeriness that sounded canned. I will, Richie, I said, closing my eyes and rubbing my forehead. He remembered Bill's wife. It was in Derry, but not her name or what had happened to her. And if you're ever in L.A., you got the number. We'll get together and mouth some chow. Sure, I felt hot tears behind my eyes. And if you get back this way, the same thing goes. Mikey, right here. I love you, man. Same thing. It's good stuff.
This was such a cute chapter in like a sad, bittersweet kind of way.
Yeah. This bittersweet is, I think, the perfect way to describe this entire interlude. It's just the fleeting memories of things that are truly important to these people, and they realize that, and they realize that it's slipping away. So they also can't blanket just say, "Oh, well, I'm going to forget you. Sorry about that." Like, at least they're taking their chances to truly give good goodbyes. You know, I think they realize it, but you don't want to verbalize those things. So you just kind of give the best goodbye that you can. And I think that was a pretty good one.
Yeah. All right. So my favorite thing was at the end of one of the sections when Mike writes, Bill, act quickly, but be careful. That idea that he knows Bill needs to do something, but can't necessarily tell what it is or what he should be doing. Just that he knows it has to be something. And that wraps us up. You should find us on social media. We are on Twitter and Instagram at floatsdownhere. You can send us your digital balloons at floatsdownhere@gmail.com. Find this show and all of our shows online at thepodcastthat.com. Subscribe and rate on iTunes. Be sure to find the Podcast That channel. Subscribe there so you can be the first in the know for when we start our 2020 Stephen King book club.
This show and all of the shows at thepodcastthat.com are produced with the love and support of our wonderful Imaginary Legion patrons. Be sure to join us on September 22nd of 2019, which is the year currently. That's for future posterity. For our autumnal State of the Legion address. We will be live streaming on the Podcast That family of podcasts YouTube channel, so go there, subscribe right now. Tune in to see who wins the very first Primus Pilus giveaway exclusively for Patreon members. Not a patron? Join the Imaginary Legion between now and September 21st, and you could have one or more entries into the giveaway. Find out more at patreon.com/stayimaginary.
Join us for the last section of this book, the epilogue, Bill Denbrough Beats the Devil 2.
You'll float too.
Stay imaginary.
Thanks.